That old rifle won't clear 3 plates in 60 seconds. 41.18? That old rifle only makes this harder. I know mine. I don't know yours. Why does that folder matter more than the prize? It's why I needed 41 seconds. 3 cameras confirm 41.18. It's official. Then ask me about the scar. No sniper title. Then why come? A county range was $19,000 short.
The verified score, the scarred rifle, and Dean's closed folder would eventually expose Ethan's mistake. But hours earlier, before anyone knew what 41 seconds would change, Ethan saw only an old man he wanted to turn away. At the High Plains Precision Range outside Billings, Montana, the announcer's voice carried the same 4 numbers: $20,000. 3 plates. 60 seconds. 400 yards. Beyond the firing line, 3 8-inch steel plates stood at different points along a surveyed 400-yard berm. Each plate was angled safely toward the ground and monitored by an impact sensor and a remote camera. The spectators remained behind a marked line under the eyes of trained range staff. The rules were simple enough to fit on one sign. A competitor received 1 cold bore attempt and exactly 3 approved cartridges. 1 shot per plate. No sighters. The clock counted upward from 0 at the start signal and stopped when the 3rd sensor confirmed a hit. Any miss ended the attempt. Anything beyond 60 seconds did the same. More than 30 experienced shooters had tried since noon. Everyone had missed at least 1 plate. Some blamed the gusts moving unevenly across the dry Montana hills. Others blamed the rule limiting them to 3 rounds. Several had arrived with custom rifles, digital weather meters, and optics that cost more than Dean Walker's pickup. None had touched the $20,000 prize secured inside the sponsor's clear display case. The money was not a publicity promise that could disappear after someone won. A bonded event company had placed the full amount in escrow, and a copy of the funding letter sat beside the rules. The range had also published the target dimensions, surveyed distance, approved ammunition list, and scoring procedure 2 weeks earlier. Competitors could question the difficulty, but they could not claim the terms had changed after they arrived. That transparency was one reason the crowd had stayed. The challenge was hard enough to feel unreasonable and controlled enough to be legitimate. Each failed attempt increased the pressure on the next shooter without changing a single condition on the board. Ethan Brooks stood beside the registration tent, satisfied with the attention the event had drawn. At 38, he was a former Marine Staff Sergeant and the civilian director of the range. He understood disciplined shooting, but he had also built the challenge around a belief he had repeated in every interview that morning. Modern precision required modern equipment. Then an elderly man in a red flannel shirt walked out of the crowd carrying a faded canvas rifle case. Dean was 81. Silver hair showed beneath a tan cap with no unit patch, no rank, and no slogan. His jeans were clean, his brown work boots were old but polished, and his movements had the measured economy of someone who protected his knees without apologizing for them. 2 young spectators raised their phones. "Grandpa wants the 20 grand, one whispered. The other laughed. Maybe the targets will feel sorry for him. Dean heard both comments. He did not pretend otherwise. He stopped at the registration table, set the cased rifle on the inspection bench, and looked directly at Ethan. "I'd like an entry form." Ethan glanced at the case, then at Dean's hands. "Sir, this is a live precision challenge, not a historical demonstration." I read the sign. "The plates are 400 yards away." The sign mentioned that too. A few people laughed, though this time the joke belonged to Dean. Ethan lowered his voice. "I'm trying to save you an entry fee and an uncomfortable minute." Dean's expression stayed calm. "The posted rules say the attempt is open to any adult who passes the equipment inspection and safety briefing. If another rule excludes me, show it to me. Otherwise, please register me." There was no anger in the request. Dean did not cite his age, his Army service, or anything he had done before that afternoon. He asked only for the same process everyone else had received. Ethan looked toward Noah Carter, the range's chief safety officer. Noah gave a small nod. The rule board contained no age limit beyond legal adulthood and no requirement for a new rifle. Ethan slid the form across the table. "1 attempt," he said. "That is what the rules promise." Dean signed the waiver, presented his identification, and paid the same fee as every other competitor. He then turned the case so the muzzle end faced safely downrange before touching either brass buckle. The quiet care in that small movement caught Noah's attention. Dean opened the case without flourish. Inside lay a walnut-stocked bolt-action target rifle wrapped in washed cotton. It was not an issued military weapon or an artifact removed from government service. It was a privately owned civilian rifle built on a commercial action in the early 1970s, chambered in .308 Winchester and fitted with a fixed 10-power scope. The walnut carried a long, smooth scar near the rear of the stock. Ethan looked at the old rifle and almost smiled. Dean placed both hands away from it. "Inspect everything you need," he told Noah. "I didn't come here asking anyone to trust a story." Noah began with the same inspection checklist used for every competitor. Dean stood back while the safety officer confirmed that the bolt was open, the chamber was empty, and a bright chamber flag was in place. Noah examined the ammunition Dean had brought, checked that it met the event rules, and verified that the rifle was in sound operating condition. Dean answered each question plainly. He never reached across the table without permission and never allowed the muzzle to drift away from the berm. The rifle passed. That simple result disappointed several people who had expected an easy reason to send the old man home. Noah read the barrel and chamber markings aloud for the scorer, then compared Dean's cartridges with the approved list. He checked the scope mounts, trigger function, stock, sling studs, and overall condition without treating age as either proof or suspicion. Dean provided a small maintenance card showing the last inspection and the date he had confirmed the rifle's zero at his home range. The card did not guarantee a hit. It established that he had prepared the equipment he chose to use. "Any mechanical issue today, you stop and call me," Noah said. Immediately, Dean replied. "Any command you don't hear, you keep your finger clear and ask." "Understood." Noah marked the equipment line approved. Dean thanked him with the same seriousness he would have given a rejection supported by evidence. Ethan rested one hand on a modern loaner rifle displayed beside the tent. "You can use this at no extra charge. Adjustable stock, current optic, fresh zero. It would give you a better chance." Dean looked at the loaner with genuine appreciation. "It looks well maintained." "It is." "Then save it for someone who needs it." Ethan nodded toward the scarred walnut. "That rifle is older than half the crowd. Age was not listed as a malfunction." Noah hid a smile behind his clipboard. Ethan tried again. "I'm not insulting you. A fixed 10-power scope and an old stock make this harder." "Maybe they do," Dean said. "But I know where this rifle places a clean first shot. I don't know yours." That answer changed the mood around the inspection bench. Dean was not rejecting technology because he feared it. He was choosing familiar, lawful equipment that had passed the same safety standard as everything else on the line. Noah reviewed the competition procedure aloud. Dean would use the same padded bench and front rest provided to every participant. He would wear eye and hearing protection. The rifle would remain open and flagged until the command to make ready. He would receive only 3 cartridges. After the attempt, whether successful or not, he would open the bolt, remove any remaining ammunition, and show the rifle clear before anyone moved. Dean repeated the critical commands back to him. He did not say he already knew them. Experience, he understood, never placed a person above range rules. The 3 cartridges were counted onto a small tray. Noah carried them to the firing point. Dean carried the open, flagged rifle with the muzzle downrange. On the way, he paused near the rule board. The event timer rested at 0, not 60. Its large display would count elapsed time upward, removing any question about what the final number meant. The first plate stood slightly left of center, the second lower and farther right, the third near a band of pale grass that moved differently from the grass around the firing line. Dean studied the official wind. Flags positioned at several distances. He also watched heat shimmer above the ground, dust crossing the access road, and the tops of scattered cedar trees. He treated none of those clues as a magic answer. Each showed only what the air was doing in one place. Ethan noticed. "The electronic station gives the wind at the firing line." "I saw it." "Then why watch the grass?" Dean looked toward the distant plates. "Because the bullet doesn't spend all 400 yards beside your station." No one laughed. A younger competitor with mirrored glasses leaned closer to the rifle, but kept his hands behind his back. "Is that stock scar from the army?" he asked. Dean shook his head. "No. This rifle was always mine." "Then where did it come from?" Dean rested a thumb near the smooth mark, careful not to cover it. "A bad decision at a safe range," he said. "That is why I kept it." The answer raised more questions than it resolved, but Noah called the line to order before anyone could ask another. Dean put on his glasses and hearing protection. He adjusted the bench only enough to sit comfortably, then waited with both hands visible while Noah checked the firing point one final time. Ethan moved behind the marked line with the spectators. "Shooter ready?" Noah called. Dean looked downrange, then back at the open action and bright chamber flag. "When the line is ready," he answered. Noah confirmed that every person was behind the safety line and that the downrange area was clear. Red warning lights came on along the firing line. "The range is hot. Load and make ready." Only then did Dean remove the chamber flag. He placed the 3 cartridges where he could reach them without searching, loaded the first, closed the bolt, and settled behind the rifle. The muzzle remained centered on the impact berm. The crowd raised its phones. Ethan folded his arms, though the confidence in his posture was no longer quite as easy as before. Noah lifted one hand. "Stand by." The electronic start tone sounded. The display changed from 0 to 1. Dean did not fire. 5 seconds passed. Then 10. A whisper moved through the spectators. The rule allowed 60 seconds, but the old man appeared, willing to spend a third of them doing nothing. He was not doing nothing. Dean watched the first official flag lean, recover, and lean again. He studied the mirage through the scope, then lifted his eye and checked the grass near the third plate. The wind did not cross the range as one smooth wall. It moved in bands, stronger on the near slope, weaker in the shallow depression, uncertain near the berm. At 20 seconds, Ethan glanced at the display. At 24, a spectator murmured, "He's waited too long." Dean exhaled. The first report carried across the hills. A moment later, the left plate snapped backward and its impact light flashed. One hit. Dean opened the bolt while keeping the rifle shouldered and the muzzle downrange. His motions were controlled rather than fast. He loaded the second cartridge, settled behind the center plate, and waited through a brief gust. The display passed 33 seconds. The second report sounded. The lower plate answered with a clean metallic ring. 2 hits. The laughter was gone. Even the people filming lowered their phones enough to watch with their own eyes. Dean loaded the last cartridge. The third plate shimmered near the pale grass. A stronger current moved across the firing line, but the distant grass had not yet followed. Dean held his position rather than copying the wind nearest his face. 38 seconds. 39. Ethan's arms dropped to his sides. At 40 seconds, the far grass bent and began to recover. Dean pressed the trigger. The rifle recoiled against his shoulder. The last plate moved, the third impact light flashed, and the sensor froze the clock at 41.18 seconds. For a heartbeat, no one reacted. Then Noah's voice cut through the range. "Cease fire. Unload and show clear." Dean opened the bolt. No ammunition remained. He waited for Noah's visual check, inserted the chamber flag when instructed, and removed his hands from the rifle. Only after the firing point was safe did Noah turn toward the target monitor. 3 camera windows showed 3 separate impacts. The electronic log listed 1 registered hit on each plate. No extra shot had been fired. The official time was 41.18 seconds, well inside the 60-second limit. What had sounded impossible had become an ordinary line on a score sheet. Someone began to cheer, but the sound died when everyone realized Dean was not celebrating. He was rubbing feeling back into 2 stiff fingers and watching Noah complete the verification. Ethan stepped to the monitor. He checked the target order, shot count, and timer record. He could have searched for a technical excuse. Instead, he read the rules again and found exactly what Dean had found at registration. 3 plates, 3 rounds, 60 seconds. Valid. Ethan took the microphone. "The official time is 41.18 seconds, he announced. "All 3 hits are confirmed." Applause moved across the firing line, louder with each second. Dean looked toward Ethan, not the crowd. He had proved he could hit the plates. The larger question was whether the people who had dismissed him could respond as carefully as he had. Ethan placed the microphone on the table and walked to the firing point without touching the oversized prize check. That choice mattered to Dean. Verification came before presentation, and safety came before either. Noah kept the line cold while he and a second scorer reviewed the remote footage. One camera showed the first plate move. Another showed the center plate. The third captured the final impact and the frozen time in the same frame. The sponsor's representative signed the result beneath Noah's signature. The representative closed the display case and asked the announcer to wait. Until every record agreed, there would be no winner's music, no check photograph, and no edited clip released by the event. Dean approved of that restraint. If a censor and a camera disagree, which one controls? He asked. The scoring panel reviews the footage under the posted protest rule, Noah said. Then review it exactly that way. Don't hurry because people are watching. The second scorer compared the time code with the electronic log. The target numbers matched the assigned order, and 3 pieces of fired brass rested in the marked tray at the bench. No one needed Dean's reputation, age, or word to complete the record. The evidence was enough. Dean remained behind the bench until Noah released the equipment. Then he carried the open, flagged rifle back to the inspection area and laid it inside the case. He did not close the buckles yet. The young competitor with mirrored glasses approached again. Mr. Walker, were you a military sniper? No. The answer was so simple that several phones lowered. Special operations? No. National champion? Dean shook his head. I won some regional matches. I lost more than I won. The young man looked toward the 3 plates. Then how did you do that? I practiced first shots, Dean said. The challenge allowed only 3. He offered no secret formula. His service record did not contain a hidden title that transformed the result. He had served in the United States Army from 1963 to 1967, spent the final part of that enlistment assisting with stateside marksmanship instruction, and left as a sergeant with an honorable record that mattered deeply to him. But the rifle had been purchased with his own money, and most of the skill people had just witnessed had been built during decades of civilian matches, hunter education courses, and careful mornings at public ranges. Noah pointed toward the smooth scar in the stock. You said that came from a bad decision. Dean looked at him, then at the crowd. A safe story, if that is what you're asking. Noah nodded. It is. Dean considered how much he wanted to share. Cameras did not create an obligation. You can listen, he said. But no one touches the rifle, and nobody uses my face in an advertisement without asking. Ethan heard the boundary and turned toward the event's media volunteer. Lower the live camera, he said. Audio only until he says otherwise. It was the first decision Ethan made that afternoon without waiting for Dean's history to justify it. Dean rested his hand beside the scar. The rifle had been built in 1973 from a commercial action, a new barrel, and a walnut stock selected at a local sporting goods store. A friend named Samuel Ortiz had helped him fit the pieces for off-duty target matches. Samuel was an Army mechanic with patient hands, a dry sense of humor, and no tolerance for careless equipment handling. They had spent several evenings checking measurements, betting the action, and testing ordinary factory ammunition before choosing a reliable load. Nothing about the rifle was mysterious. It grouped well because 2 careful people had assembled it correctly, then maintained and practiced with it for decades. The scar arrived 3 years later at a civilian match in Wyoming. The shooting had ended. Every rifle had been cleared, flagged, and placed in a rack while competitors packed a canvas shelter. A gust caught one loose side panel. Someone had failed to secure a support line. The rack shifted, and Dean's rifle struck the corner of a wooden bench. No one was injured. The range was cold. The firearm was empty. That did not make the mistake harmless. I was responsible for checking that line, Dean said. I assumed someone else had done it. Dean had stopped the packing work, checked every firearm again, and reported the incident to the match director before anyone left. He did not blame the gust or the volunteer who had tied the loose panel. His name was on the line checklist. The written review added a second-person rack check and required shelter lines to be inspected before rifles were moved nearby. Were you disciplined? One spectator asked. I was corrected, Dean said. There is a difference only if you learn from it. Samuel repaired the stock enough to make it sound and comfortable, then offered to hide the mark completely. Dean refused. Why keep damage you could erase? Ethan asked. Because I never wanted experience to make me casual. The answer landed harder than any story about a secret mission could have. The repaired rifle was inspected and tested before Dean ever fired it again. The scar remained cosmetic, not structural, and Dean had kept it as a private inspection point. Every time his thumb crossed it, he remembered that skill did not cancel rules. Age did not guarantee wisdom, and a person could be lucky once without earning the right to be careless twice. That lesson followed him after his enlistment ended. In civilian hunter education classes, he was the instructor who checked his own bench first and invited students to question him if he skipped a step. Samuel did the same. Neither man used military experience to close a discussion about safety. So the mark doesn't make the rifle special, the young competitor said. It makes the responsibility hard to forget, Dean answered. Ethan looked toward the rifle he had nearly dismissed as a museum piece. The mark was not proof of heroic combat. It was proof that Dean had preserved a lesson about accountability for 50 years. Then Ethan noticed a plain manila folder beneath the folded cotton in the rifle case. Across the top, in block letters, were the words County Range Access Project. Is that why you drove here? He asked. Dean closed the case halfway. That, he said, is why I needed 41 seconds. The folder contained no publicity plan and no request for sympathy. Inside were contractor estimates, a simple site drawing, and minutes from 3 county recreation meetings. Dean's local nonprofit range had a solid backstop and careful volunteers, but its oldest firing line had narrow benches, a broken section of path, and no covered station with enough clearance for a wheelchair. For years, those shortcomings had been treated as inconveniences to solve later. Samuel Ortiz had made them impossible for Dean to ignore. After 2 knee operations late in life, Samuel sometimes used a wheelchair for long outings. He still taught new shooters how to handle an unloaded rifle safely, how to protect their hearing, and how to stop a session the moment fatigue affected judgment. But at the county range, he could not position himself comfortably at the old benches. On wet days, the gravel path became another barrier. Dean and Samuel drew a practical improvement plan. It included 1 covered accessible bench, a firm path from the parking area, adjustable seating, and a cabinet of loaner eye and hearing protection. They refused to put either man's name on it. They wanted a working firing point, not a memorial. Samuel died before the county secured enough funding. Dean continued attending meetings. The volunteers raised part of the cost, but the final estimate still showed a gap of $18,740. The number had been reviewed line by line. It covered grading, drainage, concrete, the adjustable bench, roof materials, accessible hardware, and inspection fees. Volunteer labor reduced the total, but Dean refused suggestions to skip drainage or narrow the path to save money. A firing point that worked only in dry weather would not solve the problem the project claimed to address. The County Recreation Board had approved the design and agreed to maintain it once the nonprofit funded construction. A local contractor held the estimate for 60 days. 31 of those days remained when Dean opened the challenge announcement on his laptop. He studied the rules before he studied the prize. He called the event office to confirm that a .308 Winchester rifle was permitted, that the field was open to civilians, and that no qualification score was required. He did not mention the construction gap or ask for an exception. After the call, he drove to his home range on 2 separate mornings and practiced exactly 3 cold bore shots, recording the conditions whether he liked the result or not. Those preparations brought him to Ethan's firing line. You entered a shooting contest to finish a construction budget? Ethan asked. I entered a lawful competition with posted rules and a funded prize. You could have called us and asked you to give me money because I had a good reason. Ethan had no answer. The prize was offered for 3 hits, Dean continued. My reason didn't make the plates larger. It shouldn't make the check easier. That sentence clarified the entire afternoon. Dean had not hidden his purpose to create a dramatic reveal. He had kept it private because he wanted the same standard, not charitable treatment. The sponsor's representative returned with the signed score packet. The $20,000 award had been held in escrow before the event, and the rules allowed the winner to choose the payee. Dean completed a form directing the money to the county range's registered improvement fund. He accepted the ceremonial check long enough for the legal presentation photograph, but set a boundary before the cameras rose. 1 picture with the range staff, he said. No rifle pointed anywhere but downrange, no stage shot, and no pretending this was a military event. The photographer agreed. A social media host asked if Dean would repeat the 3 hits for a better video. No, it would take less than a minute. The line is cold, my attempt is complete, and the prize has been decided. The host turned toward Ethan, expecting the range director to persuade him. Ethan shook his head. He answered, The second refusal was easier for Ethan to respect than the first. He was beginning to understand that Dean's calm did not make a boundary negotiable. Noah brought the official score sheet. Dean read every line before signing. He checked the target numbers, ammunition count, and recorded time. Only then did he put the copy inside the manila folder. "You really read everything," Ethan said. "Most expensive mistakes begin with somebody saying the details can wait." Ethan looked toward the modern equipment displays and the advertising banner that promised technology would expose old-fashioned skill. The slogan had seemed clever in the morning. Now it reduced everyone involved to a false choice. Dean had used a scope, a stable rest, quality ammunition, and electronic scoring. He had not rejected tools. He had refused to confuse owning them with mastering them. Ethan removed the banner before the presentation began. The crowd noticed. So did Dean. When the check photograph was finished, Ethan asked for the microphone. Dean remained beside the inspection table rather than standing on the stage. His rifle was unloaded, flagged, wrapped, and secured inside the canvas case. The prize paperwork rested under his hand. Ethan faced the spectators. "This event was advertised as a test of precision," he said. "I turned part of it into a test of whether older equipment and an older shooter deserved to be taken seriously. Those were not the posted rules. They were my assumptions." He looked at Dean. "I tried to discourage you before inspection. I spoke as if age were a safety defect and a new rifle were proof of competence. I was wrong. I'm sorry." The apology did not ask the crowd to laugh at Ethan. It named the conduct, the assumption, and the person affected. Dean let a moment pass. "I accept the apology," he said. "But don't replace one bad lesson with another." Ethan frowned slightly. "What do you mean? Don't tell these people old rifles are better. Don't tell them veterans are born knowing the wind. Equipment has limits. Experience has limits. The only thing that worked today was preparation joined to safe judgment." Ethan nodded. "That's fair. And don't use me to shame the shooters who missed. They followed the rules and took a difficult attempt." Several competitors who had been staring at the ground looked up. Dean's victory did not require turning everyone else's failure into entertainment. One of those competitors, a woman who had missed the last plate at 58 seconds, stepped closer. "I thought the challenge proved I wasn't ready," she said. "It proved where one attempt ended," Dean replied. "Your practice decides what happens after that." Ethan glanced at the event bracket, where the unsuccessful names had been marked in red. He asked the scorer to replace the label failed with completed attempt and preserve the actual scores. It was a small correction, but it separated a difficult result from a judgment about the person who produced it. Noah asked whether Dean would answer one technical question for the group. "If it stays general, what were you waiting for during the first 20 seconds? Dean glanced toward the range flags. "Agreement." Noah waited. One flag showed the firing line. The Mirage showed part of the middle. The grass near the berm showed the last stretch. None told the whole story. I waited until they stopped contradicting one another. He did not give the crowd a numerical hold or an imitation shortcut. The point was observation, not a formula strangers might apply without training. The young competitor with mirrored glasses lowered them. "I laughed at your rifle," he said. Dean looked at him. "Then next time, inspect before you judge. That works on equipment and people." The young man nodded. Ethan stepped away from the microphone and offered his hand. Dean accepted it. The handshake was brief and level. Neither man invoked rank. The score sheet had certified the hits. Ethan's conduct from that moment forward would certify the apology. Before Dean left, Ethan asked whether he could visit the county range. "Not for a commercial," Dean said. "To see the project. Then come and work clothes." For the first time that afternoon, Ethan laughed at himself rather than someone else. When Dean fastened the first brass buckle on the old case. Saturday starts at 8. People who arrive at 8:05 make coffee. He closed the second buckle, lifted the strap onto his shoulder, and walked toward the parking area. The crowd gave him space, but he stopped when the path became too quiet. "You can go back to talking," he said. A range shouldn't sound like a funeral. Conversation returned, softer and more thoughtful than before. Behind him, the 3 plates hung still. The timer continued to display 41.18 seconds, but the number was no longer the most important measure of what had happened. The following Saturday, Ethan reached the county range at 7:52 wearing jeans, work boots, and an old Marine sweatshirt with no rank displayed. Dean was already there with a tape measure. The small range sat on county land beyond a line of cottonwoods. Its safety signs were clear, its berm was well maintained, and its volunteers kept careful records. The problem was not neglect. It was a design built decades earlier for one narrow idea of who would use it. Ethan walked the gravel route from the parking area to the firing line. He watched a volunteer push an empty equipment cart through a rut where rainwater collected. He measured the space beneath the oldest bench and understood immediately why a wheelchair could not fit. "The 20,000 covers this?" he asked. "The current estimate," Dean said. "If costs rise, we raise the difference before we build. No shortcuts." Dean looked at him. Ethan smiled. "I heard it as soon as I said it." They spent the morning with the volunteer board, the contractor, and two regular range users who understood accessibility from daily experience. Dean did not speak for them. He asked what worked, wrote down what did not, and changed the plan when their answers revealed something he had missed. The final design widened the firm path, created a covered station with adjustable bench height, improved drainage, and placed loaner eye and hearing protection within reachable storage. Every change remained subject to the range's established safety review. The sponsor transferred the prize to the registered project account the next business day. The range posted the amount received, invoices paid, and remaining balance for its members to inspect. Dean wanted no suspicion that a dramatic story had replaced ordinary accountability. Before construction started, the contractor staked the path and bench outline at full size. The two range users returned to test the turning space and reach distances. Their review moved the storage cabinet, changed the latch, and added a level landing beside the station. Each revision cost less on paper than it would have cost after concrete was poured. Ethan returned on 3 more Saturdays. He moved lumber, carried gravel in a wheelbarrow, and listened when experienced volunteers corrected him. Nobody treated his former rank as a construction qualification. He did not ask them to. At his own range outside Billings, he made changes too. The next precision event still allowed modern optics, weather meters, and custom rifles. It also stopped advertising technology as a substitute for practice. Safety briefings became mandatory for every competitor, including sponsored champions. Inspection order no longer changed for celebrities. The staff added an equipment familiarity statement reminding shooters that a borrowed rifle was not automatically an advantage. Ethan also reviewed access at his firing line and found 2 barriers he had walked past for years. He published the revised rules before opening registration and invited the same competitors back without charging a second entry fee. The change was not presented as Dean's command. Ethan signed his own name to it as range director, making clear that responsibility could not be delegated to the person he had wronged. Dean never became the face of the company. He declined interview requests that wanted to reduce his life to 41 seconds. When the sponsor asked to name the new county station after him, he said no. "Put the range rules where everyone can read them," he said. "That's enough lettering." The only item Dean agreed to display was a copy of the certified score sheet in the county clubhouse. It hung beside records from youth leagues, hunting safety classes, and local matches. His result was part of the range's history, not above it. By early spring, the work was complete. The project finished under budget. The remaining prize money purchased additional adjustable rests and replacement hearing protection after a public vote by the range board. On the morning of the reopening, Ethan arrived at 7:45. Dean handed him a coffee. "You're early," he said. "I didn't want kitchen duty." Dean smiled toward the new covered station. "Then help me inspect it." Dean and Ethan walked the new firing point before anyone used it. They checked the firm path, clear turning space, adjustable bench, protective roof, and reachable safety equipment. The range officer completed the formal inspection and recorded the opening in the log. Only after every item passed did the first scheduled users approach. The reopening was modest and centered on the work. The county board thanked the sponsor, the volunteers, the contractor, and the range users who had corrected the design. Dean stood with the group rather than in front of it. Samuel Ortiz's name was not carved into the bench. That had been his wish. His influence appeared in a safer, more welcoming place that people could actually use. An older woman rolled to the new station in her wheelchair and positioned herself without anyone lifting the chair or moving the bench for her. She checked the loaner eye and hearing protection, listened to the range commands, and practiced with an unloaded training rifle under direct supervision. Dean watched from behind the safety line. Ethan stood beside him. Worth the drive to Billings? Ask her. The woman finished the supervised session, cleared the training rifle, and smiled toward the volunteers. I think she answered, Ethan said. The woman returned the training rifle to the instructor and signed the range log herself. Nothing about the moment asked the crowd to admire her for using an ordinary public facility. That ordinariness was the point. The design let her follow the same commands, make the same choices, and receive the same correction as everyone else. Later that morning, Dean opened the faded canvas case at a separate bench. The scarred walnut rifle remained unloaded and flagged while a small group examined it from a respectful distance. Dean told them where it came from, why the scar remained, and why no amount of experience exempted anyone from an inspection. He did not demonstrate the 41-second run. The 3 plates at 400 yards were present, but the timer stayed dark. That day was not about repeating a performance until it became a trick. One teenager asked whether Dean believed old equipment was more reliable than new equipment. Reliable equipment is maintained equipment, Dean said. Its birthday doesn't answer the question. Another asked whether he could teach someone to read wind in one afternoon. I can teach you where to start looking. Learning to see takes longer. Ethan listened to the answers and recognized how different they sounded from the slogans he had used at the challenge. Dean never promised mastery without work. He never made mystery a substitute for instruction. Before lunch, Ethan removed a folded copy of the original event advertisement from his pocket. The headline claimed the challenge would prove technology had left old methods behind. I kept this to remember what certainty sounds like before it meets evidence, he said. Dean studied the paper, then handed it back. Keep the lesson. Recycle the ad. They laughed. The cash prize had been won in 41.18 seconds. The project it funded required months of meetings, measurements, revisions, labor, and transparent accounting. One achievement impressed a crowd. The other changed who could use a range. As the afternoon breeze moved over the berm, the 3 distant plates gave a faint metallic chime against their chains. Dean secured the old rifle inside its canvas case and fastened the brass buckles. Ethan did not offer to carry it. He knew Dean would ask if he needed help. They walked back along the new path beside the people who had come to use it. The scoreboard in Billings had measured Dean's time. What followed measured everyone else's willingness to look again.